Welcome to the Ithihasa channel. Today we discuss about Satyavati's plans to take the Kuru dynasty forward. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Nagendraya Namaha, Om Ambe Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Anjaneyaya Namaha, Swami Sharanamayyappu, Om Guruve Namaha. So we talked about how Bheeshma told Satyavati that it was possible to take the Kuru line forward by bringing a worthy Brahmana in to meet the princesses of Vichitravirya, Ambika and Ambalika. And as he said it, there was a glint in her eye. And Satyavati blushed and said, I think I should tell you this story about my childhood once, what happened. And I've never told this to anyone before, but I think you should know it now. And she told the story about how when she was a young girl entering womanhood, the great sage Parashar wanted to cross the Yamuna. And then he took her to the island on the middle of the Yamuna. Of course, in the story that Satyavati told Bheeshma, it was Satyavati was a shy young woman who was scared that the Guru would that the sage Parashar would curse her, and so she agreed to have a child with him. But of course, we know that in reality, it was a smart and shrewd Satyavati who decided that she would extract boon after boon from this great sage Parashar before she would give in, which is how she got the beautiful smell that would spread over a yojna and this beautiful look, and that the child she would have would be a beautiful child and would be an intelligent child, and she would be whole again after having that child. And then she told Bheeshma about the child she had, a child as beautiful and handsome as Kamadeva. He was dark and hence he was called Krishna, and because he was born on the island on the Yamuna, he was called Dwaipayana. He was Krishna Dwaipayana. And she told Bheeshma about this Krishna Dwaipayana who grew up instantly as he was born, and then walked away on the footsteps of his father to the Himalayas to learn from the great Parashar. And she told about how Krishna Dwaipayana was doing intense tapasya and sadhana in the Himalayas. And he was the one who was compiling the Vedas into 4 sections. And he was also being called Veda Vyasa at that time. And Bheeshma had heard about this great sage Veda Vyasa Krishna Dwaipayana and said he would be the ideal one to take the Kuru line forward. And he asked his mother Satyavati, how do we call him? And she said that when he was leaving, he had told her that you just need to think of me once and I will arrive. Just think of me once, mother. And she closed her eyes and thought of the great sage Krishna Dwaipayana. And discerning far away in the Himalayas that his mother was calling him, he appeared in front of her almost instantly. And then Bheeshma paid his respects to Krishna Dwaipayana. The sages in the palace chanted hymns in his praise and gave him the high chair. And Krishna Dwaipayana embraced his mother. She cried, for she was seeing him for the first time after he was born. He washed her face with cool water and sat down and asked her, what would you have me do, mother? And Satyavati told Krishna Dwaipayana about the dilemma facing the Kuru family, that there was no heir to take the dynasty forward. And there's a brief description in the Mahabharata between Bheeshma, between Satyavati and Krishna Dwaipayana on the merits and the problems associated with such a solution. And the discussion mainly involved whether this decision to have Krishna Dwaipayana take the dynasty forward would follow all the guidelines of Artha and Dharma and also Kama. And it was decided that if Dharma would be followed, then Artha would come, Kama should be controlled, and eventually moksha would happen. And so it was decided that it was the right decision to take. And Satyavati was overjoyed. Of course, this entire decision happened without Ambika and Ambalika being around, but that was how shrewd Satyavati was, for she knew that it was not necessary to take their opinion on the matter. And then Satyavati raced to Ambika's place and told Ambika that it is necessary that they take the Kuru dynasty forward, and she had a son from an earlier uh, encounter, and this son was Krishna Dwaipayana. And Ambika was taken aback, for it was hardly much time since her beloved husband Vichitravirya had died. And of course, she refused initially. But Satyavati was very stern on the issue and said that it was necessary that the Kuru dynasty be taken forward, and she comply by Satyavati's orders. And the poor girl Ambika was quite shattered at this, but she kept quiet. And then Satyavati convinced her and said, "He's a very nice man, he's a very gentle man, he's a very learned man. He's not very good looking and not very handsome, but he's a very beautiful hearted person." These dialogues have not changed over the last 7,000 years. And she came back to Krishna Dwaipayana and said, "Yes, she is willing to be with you." But Krishna Dwaipayana didn't agree immediately. He said, "I have been performing intense tapasya on the Himalayas, and it is necessary that I require a year's time to cleanse myself and to purify myself. And I would like your daughter to spend the next 1 year to cleanse and purify herself. For this is a yoga without lust. This is a union without lust." And Veda Vyasa said that it is also necessary for me to spend this 1 year to cleanse myself physically. For the way I am now is not presentable to this woman. But Satyavati, the queen mother, the impatient lady who would have everything her way, was having none of it. She said, "I don't care about 1 year. It has to be done now." And Veda Vyasa said, "If Vichitravirya's wife has to be with me unseasonably, she has to bear my disgusting look and smell, and it may not be right for her." But Satyavati would have none of it. This is an intense level of self-realization of the man, that he knew that it's a very delicate moment for a woman, and it's necessary that he be presented himself, even if it was without lust, in the most pleasant way, to keep the fear off her. But who was to tell Satyavati what is right and what is wrong? And Satyavati told Ambika to deck herself up in her best ornaments, to have a bath and be ready for her son from another man, Krishna Dwaipayana. And Ambika was terrified. It was evening, and the lamps were burning bright in her room. And suddenly she heard the knock on the door. And when she opened the door, the sight that came in front of her was nothing that she had ever expected in her wildest imagination. The man standing in front of her had a darkened face, darkened and sunburnt from being exposed to the elements in the Himalayas. Hair long and matted, with insects in them and leaves in them from all the time spent in the open. Face remarkably dark, a beard craggy and unkempt, coppery brown because of its exposure to the sun. A body that smelt disgustingly, in his own words. Hands calloused, and a vision that brought terror to Ambika. She could all but help herself from falling down in a faint. She invited the Rishi into her room, and in all fairness, Krishna Dwaipayana understood the terror that she was having. He was gentle, he was kind, he spoke kindly. But it was a terrible night. A night of mixed emotions. And this poor girl, Ambika, who was but 26, at the prime of her youth, dreaded the entire night and kept her eyes closed rigidly while the night went through. And in the morning, Satyavati ran to Krishna Dwaipayana. So how was it? What happened? Even this dialogue hasn't changed since the last 7,000 years. And Krishna Dwaipayana said, your daughter will bear a child who is as strong as 1,000 elephants, an intelligent child, and a boy and a man who will bear 100 sons. He prophesied at that time that the child born will bear 100 sons. But because his mother kept her eyes closed through the night, this child will be born blind. Satyavati was aghast. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. And a part of her felt that it's not going to happen the way Krishna Dwaipayana said. And she said, it's okay, let's see what happens. And Krishna Dwaipayana went back to the Himalayas. And 9 months passed, and when the child was born, it was exactly how Krishna Dwaipayana had said. The child was born blind. A body as hard as Vajra, a body as hard as diamond that even thunder couldn't damage. A child which seemed intelligent, but a child born blind nevertheless. And Satyavati went on and on, cursing Ambika and shouting at her, but that lady was already devastated at having given birth to a child that was blind, made no use. And then, taking advice from Bheeshma, Satyavati summoned Krishna Dwaipayana again, and Krishna Dwaipayana came again. And again Krishna Dwaipayana said, give me a year. But Satyavati would have none of it. Instead, she went to the younger sister Ambalika and told her that, see what has happened because of what Ambika did. Don't do that. I need you to keep your eyes open all through the night. Ambalika was a loving woman, a much more caring woman than her older sister. And she too was devastated, but she was scared and she said, okay, and she agreed. And again, Krishna Dwaipayana came to Ambalika's room and spent the night there. Ambalika did as much as she could to not close her eyes even for an instant. But the fear that engulfed her made her go as white as the moon. And in the morning when Krishna Dwaipayana came out, he told her, you will bear a valiant son, a son who will be a great warrior known for eons to come. But because you turned as white as the moonlight, your son will be born without any pigment. He'll be born an albino. And for this he shall be called Pandu, the white one. And true to Krishna Dwaipayana's words, a year passed, 9 months passed, and the child was born Pandu. Extremely handsome child with all the auspicious markings on his body, but an albino with no pigment and born extremely white. And this time Satyavati wanted to have one more child. And again she summoned Krishna Dwaipayana. And again Krishna Dwaipayana came. And this time Ambika was the scapegoat. Satyavati went to Ambika and said, you have to agree. You have to bear Krishna Dwaipayana this time. But Ambika had it with it. She already had a horrible night the first time and had a blind child now. And she refused. But she couldn't refuse her mother directly. So when Krishna Dwaipayana came, she sent her maidservant to meet Krishna Dwaipayana. The original Mahabharata doesn't describe the name of this maidservant, but it is said in much later texts that this lady's name was Parishrami. And Parishrami, this maidservant, was nothing like the other two sisters. She regarded Krishna Dwaipayana as a god, as a king, as a lover, and probably also as a husband. She was as beautiful as an Apsara. She was a Shudra woman. And as I have always mentioned, that the Varna system of those days was very different from the caste system of today. She was a Shudra woman primarily because she was the maid servant to Ambika. And she treated the great Krishna Dwaipayana like he was a god. And when morning came, Krishna Dwaipayana looked at her and said, "Your days of being a servant in this castle are over. You will bear a child who will be Dharma incarnate, who will be an amsha of Dharma Deva. He will be the greatest person with the greatest knowledge in this kingdom, who will keep this kingdom together, who will be the bond that will keep the kingdom together. He will be the most respected in this kingdom for time to come. He will be the great Vidura of intense knowledge and wisdom." And so saying, he left. As he was leaving, Satyavati asked, "Will it be good for Ambika this time?" And he said, "No, it's the maid servant who came." And Satyavati was aghast, but he put his hand up and said, "Not ever again, not ever again," and walked away into the Himalayas. And thus were born 3 children: Dhritarashtra, who was blind; Pandu, who was an albino; and Vidura, born of the Sudra woman, with the great sage Krishna Dwaipayana. A child and a man who would be respected all through the rest of the story of the Mahabharata. And so, the line of the Kuru dynasty was taken forward. Ironically, by the son of Satyavati, who was actually the daughter of the king of Chedi and an Apsara. The son of Satyavati with a sage Parashara, who was a Brahmana, with the princesses of Kashi, Ambika and Ambalika. So the Kuru dynasty technically ended with Bheeshma, because Bheeshma was the biologic son of Shantanu, who was part of the Kuru dynasty. And the Kuru dynasty was taken forward by Satyavati and her son, Krishna Dwaipayana. And there's a lesson to learn from Satyavati, an impatient woman, an egoistic woman who thought that everything should go her way. And at the end of the day, every blessing that she had, every boon that she took, every boon that she snatched, turned out to be a curse for her. This is how the Kuru dynasty progressed forward. And Bheeshma was happy. He didn't have to take part in it. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Nagendraya Namaha, Om Amme Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Guruve Namaha, Swami Sharanamayyappo, Om Anjaneyaya Namaha.